Few names in Hollywood history carry the same weight as Jack Nicholson. For more than half a century, he represented rebellion, charisma, talent, and mystery. His unforgettable grin, dark sunglasses, and larger-than-life personality turned him into one of the most recognizable faces on Earth. He became a symbol of Hollywood itself, a man who seemed to live by his own rules while dominating the film industry decade after decade. But today, as Jack Nicholson approaches his late 80s, many fans find themselves asking a surprising question. What happened to the man who once seemed unstoppable? The answer begins long before the fame, the fortune, and the legendary movie roles. It starts in a small New Jersey town where a young boy grew up believing a story about his family that wasn't true. John Joseph Nicholson was born on April 22, 1937, in Neptune City, New Jersey. From the outside, his childhood appeared relatively normal. He was raised by people he believed were his parents and grew up surrounded by family members who cared deeply about him. Yet hidden beneath the surface was a secret that would remain buried for decades. The woman Jack believed was his older sister was actually his mother. And the people he believed were his parents were, in reality, his grandparents. The family had chosen to conceal the truth after Jack's mother became pregnant at a young age. At the time, social attitudes toward unmarried mothers were harsh, and relatives believed the arrangement would protect both mother and child. Remarkably, Nicholson didn't discover the truth until adulthood. In the 1970s, journalists researching his background uncovered family records that revealed the secret. By then, both his mother and grandmother had already passed away, leaving him unable to discuss the revelation with the two women at the center of the story. It was a life-changing discovery. Many people spend their entire lives believing they know where they come from. Nicholson suddenly learned that one of the most important facts about his identity had been hidden from him since birth. Perhaps that early uncertainty contributed to the complexity people later saw in him. Even before fame arrived, Nicholson possessed a unique combination of confidence, intelligence, and emotional depth. Friends often described him as observant and intensely curious. He paid attention to people. He studied behavior. He noticed details others missed. Those qualities would eventually become powerful tools for an actor. But success was far from guaranteed. After graduating from high school, Nicholson headed west to California. Like countless young dreamers before him, he arrived in Hollywood with ambition but no clear path to stardom. The reality of the entertainment business quickly became apparent. He took small jobs and spent years trying to find opportunities. At one point, he worked in the animation department at MGM. Executives reportedly saw potential in him and even suggested he pursue work behind the scenes. But Nicholson had different plans. He wanted to perform. The road ahead would test his patience. Throughout the late 1950s and much of the 1960s, he appeared in low-budget films, independent productions, and projects that attracted little attention. The pay was modest. The recognition was limited. Many actors would have given up. Nicholson kept going. He wasn't simply waiting for luck. He was learning. Every role became an opportunity to sharpen his craft. Every disappointment became another lesson about survival in Hollywood. Years passed. Then everything changed. In 1969, Nicholson appeared in the groundbreaking film Easy Rider. His performance as the hard-drinking lawyer George Hanson electrified audiences and critics alike. For the first time, a national audience saw the magnetic presence that had been developing for years. The role earned him an Academy Award nomination and transformed his career overnight. Suddenly, Hollywood wasn't ignoring Jack Nicholson anymore. It was chasing him. What followed was one of the most remarkable runs in movie history. Throughout the 1970s, Nicholson delivered performance after performance that cemented his reputation as one of the greatest actors of his generation. Films such as 5 Easy Pieces, Chinatown, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest showcased extraordinary range. He could be charming one moment and terrifying the next. He could play rebels, romantics, criminals, intellectuals, and anti-heroes with equal credibility. Audiences never knew exactly what he would do on screen. That unpredictability became his signature. By the time the 1980s arrived, Nicholson had evolved from movie star to cultural icon. His performances in films like The Shining and later Batman introduced him to entirely new generations of fans. Meanwhile, awards continued to pile up. Over the course of his career, Nicholson earned 12 Academy Award nominations. more than any other male actor in history. He won 3 Oscars and established himself among the most respected performers ever to appear on screen. But awards alone do not explain his influence. What truly set Nicholson apart was his reputation. Within Hollywood, he became known as an actor's actor, a performer admired not only by audiences but by fellow artists. Directors wanted to work with him. Young actors studied him. Critics analyzed his performances for decades. He possessed that rare quality that cannot be taught: presence. The moment Nicholson entered a scene, attention followed him. As the years passed, success brought extraordinary rewards. The struggling young man from New Jersey became one of the highest-paid stars in Hollywood. His films generated hundreds of millions of dollars. His influence expanded far beyond movie theaters. Fame opened doors that once seemed unimaginable. Luxury homes, exclusive friendships, a life lived at the center of the entertainment world. To millions of fans, Jack Nicholson appeared to have everything. Yet fame has a way of changing even the most extraordinary lives. As the decades rolled forward, the wild Hollywood legend that audiences knew began evolving into something very different. The actor who once dominated red carpets and captivated movie screens around the world slowly started stepping away from the spotlight. And today, the life Jack Nicholson lives is dramatically different from the image many fans still carry in their minds. The question is not whether he changed. The real surprise is just how much. By the time Jack Nicholson entered the peak years of his career, he was no longer simply a successful actor. He had become a phenomenon. Throughout the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, Nicholson occupied a rare position in Hollywood. He was one of the few stars whose name alone could attract audiences to theaters. Studios trusted him. Directors sought him out. Viewers knew that if Jack Nicholson appeared in a film, something unforgettable was likely about to happen. And with that success came extraordinary wealth. Unlike many actors who experience brief moments of fame, Nicholson built a career that lasted decades. Every major role seemed to strengthen his reputation and increase his earning power. Films such as Terms of Endearment, A Few Good Men, As Good as It Gets, and many others helped make him one of the most valuable actors in the entertainment industry. One of the smartest financial decisions of his career came during the production of Batman. Rather than taking a traditional salary alone, Nicholson reportedly negotiated a deal that included a share of the film's profits and related revenues. The arrangement became legendary in Hollywood and demonstrated that Nicholson understood business almost as well as he understood acting. As the money flowed in, his lifestyle naturally expanded. For decades, Nicholson maintained an impressive real estate portfolio, including his famous property in the Mulholland Drive area of Los Angeles. Over the years, he gradually acquired neighboring properties, creating a private compound that became one of the most recognizable celebrity residences in Hollywood. The estate reflected the man himself. Private, exclusive, comfortable without being flashy. Unlike some celebrities who constantly displayed their wealth, Nicholson often seemed more interested in privacy than attention. He enjoyed success, but he rarely felt the need to prove it. Still, his lifestyle was unmistakably luxurious. He moved comfortably among Hollywood's most powerful figures. His social circle included actors, directors, producers, musicians, athletes, and influential business leaders. Few people in entertainment possessed connections as extensive as his. Yet what made Nicholson fascinating was that even those closest to him often described him as unpredictable. He could spend hours discussing art, literature, politics, sports, or cinema. Friends frequently spoke about his intelligence and curiosity. He wasn't merely a movie star enjoying fame. He was deeply interested in the world around him. Away from movie sets, another important part of his life was his family. Over the years, Nicholson became the father of several children. Although his relationships often attracted media attention, those who knew him personally frequently emphasized the importance he placed on maintaining connections with his family. His children grew up largely outside the intense spotlight that followed him. As the years passed, Nicholson appeared increasingly focused on family relationships rather than public attention. While tabloids often preferred discussing celebrity romances and social events, the quieter reality of fatherhood occupied a significant place in his life. This side of Nicholson rarely made headlines, perhaps because it didn't fit the image people expected. To the public, he remained the rebellious Hollywood legend with a famous smile and unmatched confidence. Yet behind closed doors, Friends described someone capable of great warmth, generosity, and loyalty. Many stories emerged over the years that revealed a more personal side of his character. People who worked with him often spoke about his kindness toward colleagues and crew members. Others remembered his sense of humor and his ability to make entire rooms laugh. Even after achieving enormous success, Nicholson never completely lost the curiosity that had defined him as a young man struggling to find his place in Hollywood. But time eventually reaches everyone, even legends. As Nicholson entered his 70s and later his 80s, subtle changes began appearing. The pace that had once defined his life gradually slowed. The movie roles became less frequent. The public appearances became increasingly rare. The man who once seemed omnipresent in American culture started becoming harder to find. Fans noticed. Hollywood noticed. The media noticed. Questions began circulating. Why was Jack Nicholson stepping away? Why wasn't he making new films? Why was one of the most celebrated actors in movie history suddenly absent from the industry he had dominated for decades? The truth was far less dramatic than many rumors suggested. Acting at Nicholson's level required tremendous energy, preparation, and commitment. Decades of work had already secured his place in history. There was little left for him to prove. His final major film role came in How Do You Know? After that, he largely disappeared from filmmaking. Various reports over the years suggested that he preferred a quieter life. Rather than constantly pursuing new projects, Nicholson appeared content to spend more time at home and with family. For fans accustomed to seeing him everywhere, the change felt almost unbelievable. This was Jack Nicholson, the man whose performances had defined generations. The actor who seemed larger than life. The star whose presence could dominate an entire screen with a single glance. And yet he was gradually retreating from public view. The mystery only grew as years passed. Occasional photographs surfaced. Rare appearances at sporting events generated headlines. Every glimpse of Nicholson suddenly became news. People who had spent decades watching him on movie screens now found themselves searching for clues about his daily life. What was he doing? How was he spending his time? Was he happy? Was he healthy? The scarcity of information made public curiosity even stronger. Ironically, the less Nicholson appeared, the more fascinated people became. Hollywood itself seemed uncertain how to process his absence. New stars emerged. New franchises dominated theaters. Entire generations of actors built careers after Nicholson stepped away. Yet his shadow remained. Whenever discussions turned to the greatest actors in film history, his name continued to appear near the top of every list. He was no longer actively participating in Hollywood, but Hollywood still couldn't stop talking about him. And behind the walls of his famous Los Angeles home, a very different chapter of life was quietly unfolding. The wild parties, packed film schedules, international premieres, and constant public attention that once defined his existence had largely faded away. In their place emerged something few fans expected. A lifestyle so private, so removed from the image many remembered, that it seemed almost impossible to reconcile with the Jack Nicholson who once ruled Hollywood. And as the years continued passing, the reality of how he spends his days became one of the most surprising stories of all. For most of his life, Jack Nicholson seemed impossible to imagine as an ordinary man. He was the actor who dominated movie screens for generations. The Hollywood icon whose grin became famous around the world. The star whose energy appeared limitless. Yet the most surprising chapter of his story may be the one he is living now. Today, as Jack Nicholson approaches his late 80s, his life is defined not by premieres, film sets, or endless public appearances, but by something far quieter: privacy. For decades, Nicholson lived at the center of American entertainment. Now, he spends much of his time away from the spotlight that once followed him everywhere. His longtime Los Angeles home has become the center of his world. The sprawling property, located in one of the most famous celebrity neighborhoods in California, provides the privacy that has become increasingly important to him over the years. While millions of fans still remember the energetic star of films like The Shining, Batman, and A Few Good Men, the man behind those performances has embraced a slower pace of life. And in many ways, that transition reflects a reality experienced by countless people as they age. The difference is that few people make that journey while the entire world watches. Public reports over recent years have suggested that Nicholson spends much of his time at home, surrounded by familiar comforts and close family members. Friends and associates who have occasionally spoken about him describe a man who still enjoys conversation, still follows current events, and still maintains the sharp wit that made him famous throughout Hollywood. But aging brings challenges to everyone. Reports in recent years have noted concerns about the natural effects of advanced age. Some media outlets have speculated about his health, though Nicholson himself has remained intensely private and has not publicly discussed many personal matters. What is known is that he has largely withdrawn from the demanding lifestyle that once defined his career. The constant travel, the exhausting production schedules, the endless cycle of interviews and promotional appearances. Those chapters belong to another era. Instead, family appears to have become one of the most important parts of his life. Over the years, several of Nicholson's children have remained close to him. Public reports and occasional comments from people around him have suggested that family connections play a central role in his daily routine. For a man who spent much of his life balancing fame with personal relationships, these bonds seem more significant than ever. And perhaps there is something poetic about that. After all, Nicholson's own life began with one of the most unusual family stories in Hollywood history. The shocking discovery that the woman he believed was his sister was actually his mother changed the way many people viewed his journey. Now, decades later, family remains one of the strongest themes running through his life. It is a reminder that even for global superstars, the most meaningful relationships are often the most personal ones. Financially, Nicholson remains one of the most successful actors Hollywood has ever produced. Various estimates over the years have placed his net worth in the hundreds of millions of dollars, built through decades of acting, wise business decisions, and valuable real estate investments. Yet what fascinates many observers is that he no longer appears driven by wealth, status, or public attention. He already achieved those goals long ago. There are few awards left to win, few records left to break, few professional accomplishments left to chase. Instead, Nicholson's story has become something different. A story about what happens after the applause fades. Hollywood has never quite known how to replace him. Every generation produces talented actors. Every decade creates new stars. But figures like Jack Nicholson are rare. His combination of talent, charisma, intelligence, unpredictability, and cultural influence created a presence that transcended individual films. He wasn't simply acting in movies. He was helping define entire eras of American cinema. Ask many directors, actors, or film historians to name the greatest performers of the modern age, and Nicholson's name almost always appears near the very top. His influence can be seen in countless performances that followed. His style inspired generations. His fearlessness expanded what audiences expected from leading men. His characters continue to be studied in film schools around the world. Even years after stepping away from acting, his work remains alive. New audiences continue discovering Chinatown. Young movie fans continue experiencing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The unsettling power of The Shining still captivates viewers decades after its release. The famous courtroom scene in A Few Good Men continues to be quoted by people who weren't even born when the film premiered. That kind of legacy cannot be measured by awards or box office numbers alone. It becomes part of culture itself. Friends and colleagues who have spoken publicly about Nicholson often describe him with deep admiration. They talk about his intelligence, his generosity, his remarkable memory, his ability to command attention without demanding it. And perhaps most importantly, they describe someone who genuinely loved movies. That passion helped sustain one of the longest and most celebrated careers Hollywood has ever seen. Yet what makes Nicholson's current life so fascinating is not simply what he achieved. It is the contrast. For decades, he represented excitement, energy, and larger-than-life fame. Today, he represents something else. The reality of growing older. The transition that eventually comes for everyone, no matter how famous. The understanding that life changes. Priorities change. The spotlight moves on. And still, life continues. There is something profoundly human about that journey. Millions of people spend years pursuing careers, building reputations, and chasing success. Eventually, many discover that the most meaningful moments often occur far away from public recognition. In some ways, Nicholson's later years reflect that truth. The world still sees a legend. But behind the legend is a man who has lived nearly 9 decades. A man who experienced extraordinary success, personal revelations, artistic triumphs, family joys, and the inevitable challenges that accompany a long life. Perhaps that is why people remain so fascinated by him. Not because he is perfect, not because he is mysterious, but because his story contains so many of the experiences that define the human journey itself. The young dreamer searching for opportunity, the struggling artist fighting for recognition, the superstar reaching unimaginable heights, the father nurturing family relationships, the elder statesman reflecting on a lifetime of memories. Jack Nicholson's life contains all of those chapters. And while the world may no longer see him on movie screens, his impact remains impossible to ignore. His performances continue to inspire. His films continue to entertain. His legacy continues to grow. At 89, the most surprising thing about Jack Nicholson may not be where he lives, how much money he has, or how rarely he appears in public. It may be that after spending decades as one of the most recognizable people on Earth, he has found something many celebrities never achieve: peace. And as Hollywood looks back on his extraordinary journey, one truth becomes clear. Long after the cameras stopped rolling, long after the premieres ended, and long after the spotlight moved elsewhere, Jack Nicholson remained exactly what he had always been: a once-in-a-generation talent, a Hollywood original, and a living reminder that some legends never truly leave the stage. They simply become part of history.